Hello, and welcome back to Movie Husbands. Today we're reviewing Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. Three generations of the Dietz family return home to Winter River after an unexpected family tragedy. Still haunted by Beetlejuice, Lydia's life soon gets turned upside down when her rebellious teenage daughter discovers a mysterious portal to the afterlife. Beetlejuice Beetlejuice is directed by Tim Burton and stars Michael Keaton, Winona Ryder, Jenna Ortega, Monica Bellucci, Willem Dafoe, Justin Theroux, and many more. So Jeffrey, what did you think about Beetlejuice Beetlejuice?
Beetlejuice for me is very like chicken or the egg with my sense of humor. I don't know if it's where my dark sense of humor took off or where the origin of it, or it's simply something that I really liked when I was a kid and I responded to. I don't know, but I did tell the story in our 2000 subscriber video that when I was 6 or 7 years old, I went to the video store with my mom and she recommended this movie to me because she thought I would like it. So I took it home, I watched it, I absolutely loved it, and I rented it every weekend following for what seemed like an endless amount of weekends. So it's one of those movies that's just very formative for me, and I just loved it then. I love it to this day. I just think it's really, really great. It's this rare blend of great comedy, like a genuinely unique aesthetic from Tim Burton, and this silly, dopey exploration of this thing called death that we're all so afraid of. Anyway, that's just to set the stage to say that even though I love Beetlejuice, I don't feel overly protective of it. The idea of a sequel was nothing that really bothered me. I was just happy to have these characters back and see what they're up to, and I thought that that was due after all of this time, frankly. So it means so much to me that I found myself actually getting chills during the opening credits when the Beetlejuice theme was playing and I saw the font. It's funny, for as anti-nostalgia bait as I am on this channel, it can occasionally work on me too. Anyway, the sequel is a pretty good time. I don't like it nearly as much as the original, and I never thought that I would. I don't think anything can do that, but it does do a good job of taking what we loved about the first film and modernizing it. It's quick moving, perhaps maybe a little too quick moving, but it's funny. It's enormously creative in its art direction. I think Tim Burton definitely seems to be firing on all cylinders here for the first time in a really long time, and I had a good time with this.
I completely agree. I really enjoyed myself. I think I've always really enjoyed Tim Burton's visual eye for such unique characters and set designs, and so many of his films have this moody, dark, and gothic-like sensibility about them.
Yep.
And the original Beetlejuice, I would say, is certainly one of my favorites as far as his filmography goes. The original movie has all these eerie tones, as dealing with the subject of death often does, but it also manages to be so vibrant, playful, and fun, some of which you had talked about in your opening as well. And I just love the imagination and the ingenuity on display in the original film. The practical sets, the costume designs, the characters who have such specific personas.
Yeah.
When it comes to making a sequel, I definitely felt much the same as you did. I'm not very protective of it, but I did really question whether making a sequel decades later, I would feel the same way about it. I think in some ways, many of the things that might have worked back then don't always translate well as you grow older. Some of that I find to be just a natural progression of us aging, such as will these absurdish, childish jokes still land with somebody who has grown in age? On the other hand, how are the ways that the film is produced translate from being produced back in, I think this was what,
88?
88?
Yeah.
Yeah, versus 2024? Would the film still feel imaginative, fun, and grounded in practical ways like the first film did? So with all that said, and as we mentioned, I'm pleased to say I really enjoyed this film, as it sounds like you did as well. I think in terms of the highs, I would say that focus on practical effects and set designs was certainly one of the highlights. I also immensely enjoyed the characters. Some of them I would say a little bit more so than others. I thought the humor mostly landed. I felt like our audience certainly enjoyed themselves a lot. So yeah, I enjoyed myself.
I was watching the first film last week, and I was really struck by how little sympathy that film has for its characters. Everyone is really ignorant and they're not listening to each other. The character of Charles is that like overstressed dad who is trying relentlessly to relax, but the idea of relentlessly relaxing is making him not relaxed. Lydia has this darkness of adolescence that's almost comical and has made it into a personality. It's a very funny satire, and something I like about this film is it resists the type of character assassinations that would make us feel too sympathetic towards those characters. The film doesn't do anything to hinder their shortcomings. They're on as display as ever. They're as delusional and self-absorbed as ever.
Yeah, and we could go a little bit into the characters themselves. First, we come across, I think Winona Ryder's character, Lydia, is one of the characters we are reintroduced to. And I thought this was a perfect reintroduction because she's hosting this ghost show. She's dressed exactly like she always was in the first film. Her hair is even the same way. Nothing has changed about her character at all.
Yeah, everything that she was in the original film has just been updated. And I like the ways she now echoes Catherine O'Hara's character, and that she has a grumpy teenage daughter who doesn't want to talk to her and is super difficult. And that makes an interesting relationship between Catherine O'Hara's character and Winona Ryder's character that I really liked.
Yeah, I like that for the reason that both Winona Ryder's character and Catherine O'Hara's character are very two different characters, but their parenting styles literally come across in the way that they're different people.
I would like to take ownership of Justin Theroux.
Okay, go ahead.
This guy is such a terrific idiot in this movie. Like, this character could not have existed in the first film because he's such a product of our modern environment. This over therapy, new age, like, I can feel your energy sort of hoax guy. Like, if the worst person that you've ever met learned therapy terms, he says things like, I met her in my sorrow circle. He's just this self-absorbed moron that fits in with all of these people so perfectly. When you think of the Beetlejuice sequel, you come here and you want to see all the characters you love again. So you're naturally a little hesitant whenever there's a new character. But I thought Justin Theroux's character was just a terrific addition.
The way I don't have to describe his character, but somebody in our audience did by this silent moment after he said something super cringy and somebody just said out loud, gross. And everybody in the audience laughed.
Yeah.
It sums up his character so easily. But he was certainly the highlight, I think, of all the new characters that were introduced.
Yeah, there's only like 3 scenes with the priest, but the priest is very funny too. He's like this really verbose, spiritual, strange guy who says things that are so convoluted that they barely make sense. So that's kind of a cool running joke, but he's not really a character. He's more of just a running joke.
Speaking of those 2 characters in particular, one of my favorite things about the first movie was that Tim Burton built these characters, which were really satirical characters. And here we have that with these 2 people. I think we could also add Willem Dafoe to the mix there. He is a wonderful addition, a bit, I would say, not necessary to the film. And I think we'll get into that a little bit later.
Yeah, I agree. I'm always pro Willem Dafoe, but I didn't think that his character, aside from a kind of funny backstory, didn't really add much to the film.
Yeah, he's playing this guy who is an actor who is playing a detective. So that meta quality really added a lot to the film, I think, in terms of humor.
You know what was odd, actually? I didn't mention this to you, but I think it's interesting that they kept his backstory in, considering the original film had Alec Baldwin in it, and he dies in kind of a similar strange way.
Oh, I didn't think about that.
Yeah, anyway, that's just a comment. I'm surprised that they didn't edit it out or find a new backstory or something before the film was released, but anyway.
Also, another little funny note, the couple that's introduced at the beginning of this ghost show with Winona Ryder's
Sorry, I thought that couple was so funny.
They
have a dog named Taco.
Yes, I was going to say that. It's just like this married white couple that named their Chihuahua Taco.
Yeah,
just
hilarious.
Like
the second I saw them, I knew what he was doing. And I knew like exactly that type of person, like super uptight, suburban, really, really funny. Great stuff.
Going from there, we should definitely talk about Michael Keaton because he does play Beetlejuice in the movie. Like the first one, I'm glad he didn't have maybe as much screen time. Like they didn't overuse him, I think.
Yeah.
It's like no time had passed. He just settled right into this role as Beetlejuice again.
Yeah, definitely. The only flaw I would say with that, not specifically with his performance, but he's in the movie certainly more than the first movie. And I agree with you that he's not overused, but I do wish that they found a way to get the characters with Beetlejuice a little bit earlier, because that doesn't actually happen until maybe the hour mark. And then the back half of the movie, we have like a series of reunions and he gets all these scenes with the characters that are from the first film. But I would have liked that to happen, I don't know, maybe at the 30-minute mark.
A couple other minor characters that I want to briefly mention. It was nice seeing Danny DeVito in here. I thought it was hilarious how I knew it was Danny DeVito before he turned around.
Yeah, me too.
Even though with all that makeup and stuff, just like his voice and his persona, like you could immediately tell. This is such a side note, but I loved some of the little Easter eggs that were thrown throughout the movie. Like you see a close-up of the car off the bridge in the model. There's Jane Butterfield. Her mother played the realtor in the original film that was trying to sell the house. And funny enough, the daughter became the realtor in this movie.
Yeah, and they sound identical, actually.
And then we could also talk about Arthur Conti. He plays a character named Jeremy in the film. I don't want to talk too much about him because he does have a bit of a role in the plot and the narrative. So that's a little bit of a spoiler territory. But he plays this character that Jenna Ortega meets during the movie, and they form a little bond.
We got to talk about how like Catherine O'Hara should win an Oscar for this movie. I'm joking, but she was really great in this movie. She was having a ball.
Hands down, she was my favorite person in this movie, my favorite character.
There are too many hilarious scenes to count. I'll just say she continues to do her art in very outrageous and self-aggrandizing ways. That is complete with a grief exhibition and even some portraits of her screaming in agony. Yes. Every time she's on screen, it's very, very funny. The writers were clearly having a great time with her character, and she seemed to be just full throttle into it.
So going from here, I want to talk about some of the critical flaws I saw in the movie. There were things that I think really inhibited my experience, but I think things that with a little bit of tweaking could have made the film so much better. One of that was the pacing and the narrative. And both these go in hand because the film is on the shorter side. I think it's about 90 minutes. They pack so much into this movie that is so completely unnecessary that it can't focus or rest on certain moments. And for that, the film just feels like you're racing through all these plot devices and narrative. If it just took the time to just settle down, not focus on too many characters and people, while I found some of these new characters interesting, some of them, like Willem Dafoe's character and Monica Bellucci's character, I thought could have been completely taken out of this film and it would have still been the same. Interestingly enough, Monica Bellucci, I think she had this very extremely effective entrance, this scene of her stapling the pieces of her body back together. But then she becomes this character that the movie practically abandons.
Yeah, I agree. So there's like two main subplots, which is Monica Bellucci's character and then the boy that Jenna Ortega kind of falls for. And I think one of those needed to go. I know that they're both necessary to get us to the end of the film, but I think it could have been rewritten or restructured in some way that there wasn't so much going on, because then there's even other tiny little subplots involving her dad and involving like how are we going to get Beetlejuice to where he needs to go and things going on with Catherine O'Hara. There's just a lot going on in this movie. And I appreciate that it has such a relentless pace because it was always entertaining, but I think it could have taken a little more time to breathe. Of all the things that are great about the original film is it does take some time to breathe. It's not a film that's fast paced in any way, and they're still able to do all of the things that I loved about it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And in conversation with comparing it to the first movie, I really appreciated this more slow eeriness that it had. And this film, I think, just clearly leans so much into the outrageous and the funny humor of it all that it forgot a little bit about that dark nature of the first movie.
I think that the arts department here did a really terrific job too. Some of that I think is just letting Burton's creative juices just start flowing, but it's also an ode to all of these collaborators that he brought with him that I think really did a terrific job on bringing everything in this film to life in such a macabre and profoundly interesting way. Like the film is structured in a way that we spend a good amount of time in the underworld or the afterlife or whatever you want to call it, which allows us this deep in mythology. Like we get a soul train to the great beyond, which is kind of fun. The afterlife police force, like we learn a little bit about their immigration policies. But as we're going through all of these different areas of the afterlife, we get to see all this wonderful set design that I think really echoes the first film in beautiful ways and also allows them to do all of these fun things with how people have died because as we know, if you were stabbed with a sword or something, that sword still exists in the afterlife, hanging out of your body. So there's all these cool costumes. There's all these cool sets. I think they did a really terrific job with this. If you just look around in various shots, there's just so many funny things going on.
So you ready to go to grades?
I am. I'm going to give Beetlejuice a B. I thought it was a very good time. One thing I really liked about this, and this is like a general comment on all legacy sequels, but I think oftentimes they forget why we like the film in the first place. The new Ghostbusters movies are like warm, family-friendly comedies where we fell in love with the Ghostbusters because they were like sarcastic jerks who suddenly became successful. The Hocus Pocus sequel descended into this weep fest about their Sanderson sisters, talking about how much they value one another, when the whole point of the first movie is how Winifred Sanderson hates her sisters, and that's why the first movie is so funny. I'm just saying that you don't need to make a film heartwarming in order to replicate what was going on in the first film that we like so much, and I think that this film took that lesson. Frankly, many legacy sequels don't, and they replicated so much of what I liked about the first film that the nostalgia was just naturally part of the ride instead of them trying to artificially manifest it. Anyway, I really liked it. I had a good time. I can't say that I'm going to watch this nearly as much as the first Beetlejuice. That movie is special to me, but I could see myself throwing this on again in the future. It's a pretty good time.
I completely agree. I think the thing about rewatchability is there's so many jokes packed into this film. It would be nice to go back and catch a lot of things. With that said, I give the movie a B as well. I enjoyed it for what it was. I wouldn't say the film really justified its existence in my eyes, but maybe it didn't really aim or need to be. It knew it was just here to have a good time by revisiting a world enjoyed by so many, and I think it was successful at doing that.
And that's it for a review of Beetlejuice, which is now in theaters. Definitely check it out. Our crowd was really enjoying it when we saw it, so certainly go see it in theaters this weekend. Let us know what you thought in the comments below, and we'll see you next time.